Welcome back. This is part 2 of how to build and paint the MPC Imperial Shuttle Tydirium model kit. I think I goofed that up. It's the MPC Shuttle Tydirium model kit, made back in the 90s, only available through eBay right now. It's about a $50 to $60 model kit on eBay. And we're going to do a little walkthrough of photos, and I'll kind of walk through how I painted it and made it. So we left off where we were we were starting the white gray base color. So you can see here the canopy is pretty much done except for the weathering. This is the base. You can see they've got landing gear optional. I always intended to do it in flight mode because it looks much better in flight mode to me. So I've left the interior of this landing gear black. Let's see here. These will cover it up. And I'm actually planning on doing a light switch, not an actual light switch, but a switch for lighting that's going to pop through this little landing gear compartment. All right, so let's see. Also painted this white gray. I didn't do all of it at once white gray because it takes a little while to get all this white gray, and I probably ran out of time. All right, so the first weathering I did was on the landing gear. It's nice to start on something that's not going to be seen that much, so you can get a good feel for how strong your colors are, how giving the plastic is, and that kind of thing. If you put something on there that eats the plastic, you would want to do that for something that's not going to be seen. So we started with the landing gear and just kind of started experimenting, getting a feel for it. I learned that black was very strong, like black panel accent liner just screams on this white gray. So that's one thing I learned quickly, is that black is a little too harsh for this model. I went with dark brown and decided that was a better substitute for black. And also I should probably be using gray. Let's see. This is it finished. It's in there. And you can see I've started with the gray on this one. You can see this inside is gray. So there's the landing gear. It looks a little toyish to me. It doesn't look super realistic. So I'm glad I ended up going with the flight mode. Let's see here. That is this one. I believe it's finished now. I think I've added in the dark brown and a second coat of gray as weathering. So I went on, finished the landing gear, got onto the base. Went ahead and put a wash, this Vallejo model wash of gray. It's acrylic. I just wanted to make the underside kind of increase that effect of the artificial shadow. Also wanted this bottom to be a little bit grimier. So added that wash, and there it is dried. You can see the wash dried, especially in these places. I think I've gone ahead and started weathering it with the gray Tamiya panel line accent color. So this has some gray. It looks like maybe a touch of brown put in there too, but I wanted to go real sparingly with the brown. Yeah, so I must have been using the brown because I can definitely tell there's some brown in there. Maybe a touch or two over there. You can see that I was experimenting, seeing, do I want to accent these lines right here? And after that little experiment, I decided yes, I do, because they just kind of blend in too much without the accent liner. And on top of that, once you get that little line accented, you can use little fine pointed Q-tips to pretty much get everything off but what's in that crack, and it gets like 90% off, but it leaves just that 10%, and that 10% really makes a difference. All right, so moving on, I think we've got gray and brown down. Next would be to add some dark brown. You can see the dark brown's been applied, and started moving on to more little things, and kind of did parts at a time to make sure it's looking good and making sure that's what I want to do with it. Because once you put that panel line accent liner down, it's hard to get off 100%. Even if you add a lot of turpentine, it's hard to get off, and you run the risk of taking off base paint. So here we go. We're adding layers of panel accent liner. You can see I've been cleaning it up over here. And now we've added another layer of wash. I think I've probably gotten to the black, and I've put black in some of the edges and corners that I think are going to be really grimy. I went for these parts right here where you have raised parts. You probably want to make them pop off more and add some black on some areas like that. Maybe a little bit of black around here, but use black very sparingly because it really stands out, and it really can be overused easily. All right, so this I think it might be about finished by now. You can see I've got all the lines done, and I think I did some stronger than others because I didn't want it to look uniform. The more unusual it looks, I think the better, because it looks like it's not forced to me. So that was a conscious choice. All right, moving on to the underside of this cockpit. Here we have the unaccented version. Started with gray, and then while the gray was drying, I added some dark brown. I could see in the studio version references that these little parts are not really accented very strong, so I put some color on there, but I plan on taking most of it off. Here it is messy. All the lines have been accented, and now I just need to clean it up. While it's drying, I went ahead and worked on this piece. Here it is just painted, and here it is accented and not cleaned up. So while that piece is drying, I go back and I clean up this version with a very lightly dampened Q-tip. Here's my fine point Q-tip. You can buy these, and these were essential in this project. So you get like a Q-tip, just like a drop of paint thinner on it. Then you can use these and just push your little fine point Q-tip onto the Q-tip, and it soaks it up. Just a little bit of paint thinner gets on there, and you can rub all the little surfaces. It's not good not to rub too hard because you can easily scratch off base paint, and you can't undo that. So here we go. This is now the cleaned version. We're going to move on to weathering these little detail parts. Here's the back painted. Here's these parts painted, just the pre-shading showing through. And this is the landing ramp. The landing ramp, I went ahead and masked off. You can see the masking tape here from where I just finished, but I masking taped the top and bottom and got this side completely black. I thought it would look a lot better than having it be white and just have the whole thing being white. So there we go. It's black. Now we were weathering. I'll flip this around upside down. Okay, so here we are weathering the back. I started off with gray, add a little bit of dark brown, and then as that's drying, come in with some brown and touches of black. Black in the grimy spots, like where oil and rust and just dirt is going to build up most, probably in these dark bottom edges and creases. So you can see it's really dark there. And just tried to think about the natural buildup. All right, so here it is finished. I don't know how we got back to this. So here I weathered this cockpit, and I was studying it thinking, I don't think I like it, because you see how fine that accent line is. I've cleaned it up with the fine point one. I tried not to have it everywhere, just little parts of it, and I didn't even want to do this top part. I decided that the studio model version does not have these lines. That's one other thing that I would take back if I was doing this the second time. I would go ahead and sand off all these ridges, I think. It's a lot of work, but I think it would look better in the end. The studio model does not have those ridges. I don't know why MPC put them in there. Probably for the same reason they wanted the cockpit pilots to be orange instead of black. All right, so here you see the cockpit panel lined and accented. I ended up going over that, and I'll show that in a minute. Here are the guns. They're pre-shaded. Here is the main body painted. You can see gray panel accent liner in the grate right there, and I just used a little bit of gray around here. I thought this part of the body needed to be very lightly weathered. I've seen other models of this shuttle, and I've seen how people get carried away and it looks bad. I thought it looked like it should be just very finely weathered, with gray probably as a second coat of gray, probably as dark as it should get. Okay, so you can see here, this was really fun to do. This is all meant to be all black. I've seen some versions where they paint this white, but I think in the studio version it is all black. You can see here I used masking tape, and it didn't do a great job, but I go back and fix that. You can see here this is not actually all black, that there's edges catching light, and that is achieved by blowing with the airbrush. I blew white gray from this angle that the camera's at. See how you can just barely see the edges of these grates. You can achieve that look of light catching the grate by blowing it from this angle. And here we're showing the weathering of these little lines. I'll go back, and so I'm accenting all the panel lines right here, but I do plan on going back after everything's been panel lined and adding like detailed weathering, like runoff and trails and that kind of thing. But you see here how the white gray caught it really well, and I thought that looked really good, and it came out really well. Here I'm panel lining the guns, and I think we're pretty much done. I left the interior of this black. I think it says to do it gray, and it even looks like a dark gray in the studio model version, but I didn't understand why we should do it dark gray, because I think the dark black really makes it pop more, so that's what I ended up going with. That was a personal preference. So at this point, I grabbed the neck, and I was going to see what it looked like, and I was like, oh boy, this does not look good. I guess I didn't blow enough white gray base color onto this, and too much of the pre-shading is showing through, and it doesn't even look like it's the same color. So that's when I was like, oh crap, I've got to go back and redo this. I'd already panel line accented the panel lines, so I was like, well, I'm just going to have to do it over again. It's not that bad. I went ahead and airbrushed over it again. This is the guns cleaned up. You can see that line that I was trying to get off is still there. You can't really see that on these others because I sanded it off. I'm still glad I sanded off the 3 guns instead, even if one broke, and I was able to fix it. So, okay, here we are. I've cleaned up the black over here, and I'm going to clean up that little spot right there, and I must have done that already. And this is what the fin looks like, painted and put up there. I added a little bit of gray just to help visualize what it was going to look like. And you can see here I'm painting over the pre-shading. This is an unpainted wing with the pre-shading. This is halfway painted. Here it is finished, and here it is what it looked like before. It's hard to tell in the photos with pre-shading. It's much easier to tell in person. In person, this is more kind of what it looks like, but I'll show you another picture in a second where I turn down the lights and you can actually see it much better. The exposure is down and you can actually tell. So this is still like halfway through. This is it finished. You can see I left some pre-shading showing in some parts just to kind of help it make it look weathered. This is with the exposure down. You can kind of tell this is where you can see the pre-shading popping through. Let's move on. I tried several different techniques or methods for painting over pre-shading. I tried like painting in the white areas first with the gray white and letting the black pre-shading stay. I figured out after 2 or 3 different methods that all of them end up looking the same. So one's not much better than the other. I did prefer this next method. I think I did the most, which was doing a panel at a time, because it allows you to focus on this panel and you can keep the sides that nice pre-shaded dark gray. So this is the one I preferred. What I did was work one panel at a time, and I focused on keeping the sides remaining pre-shaded, and it gives that raised surface feeling. Here it is from the side, from an angle, and you can see all that detail. It's like you don't even have to line the panel line accent liner, add panel line accent liner. Well, I hate that word. You don't even have to add that because the pre-shading is what does the trick. And it's much cleaner, and so that's what I would suggest doing, is doing one panel at a time, making sure you blow it at angles that you leave the sides darkened. And here's another angle version. All right, here's kind of a picture of what it's gonna look like, or what it is looking like. I think this is where I saw that cockpit and I say, don't like it like that. I'm going to paint over it. So next scene, you'll probably see a lighter version. I went through and I also painted white gray over some of this, these lines that I had accented, just to dim them and fade them a little bit. I wanted them to show through, but I wanted them to be weaker. You can achieve that by thinning down your solution, or you can do it like I did. So here you go. This now matches the same color. I put more white gray down, thickened it, so it's actually looking white gray, not gray. All right, so here are the panels on the wings. All the wings are done except for those little inserts. Now it's time to do the inserts. You can see I went back to step 1. I did pre-shading on these little inserts. This is the pre-shading side, and this is this after I've added pre-shading. I've put on a dark gray. I'm doing 3 stages here on these. I do black, dark gray, and then a light gray, mainly white gray, with the edges being kind of shaded almost. And I think it achieves a real nice gradation. It kind of makes it look, I don't know, interesting. So I noticed in the studio model version, it looks like they also did lighten these raised surfaces a little bit. I don't know if that was intentional, but these boxes are a little bit lightened. Maybe you can do that with the Tamiya snow pastels, but I didn't. I thought about it and I just, didn't bother. So here you go. Here they are finished. And so you apply a clear coat to all the wings. The thing that you need to be on the lookout for is like every raised surface is exposed. Even the edges are exposed. You're going to see all the edges and everything. So you have to be mindful of that when you're painting. that's one danger with this thing is you need to paint every single surface, every square inch of the surface, because it all shows. You can easily forget an area. Okay, here it is, clear coated. You can see this is how the gradation ended up looking. I really like how the gradation looks. That's why I did it. You might not like it, so it's up to you. Here we are starting with the panel line accents on the wings. So I start with gray because you want to start really light. I do gray over the whole thing. While the gray is drying, I go in and add little bits of dark brown. Let's see, are we to the dark brown yet? This is great. Okay, so here we are with dark brown. Add dark brown to spots, not all over. That way it doesn't look like everything's uniform and there's actual natural wear on it. So I believe this is all cleaned up. You can see there's a little bit of a darkness in some spots and gray in most of the other areas. I actually did apply the accents to every single edge. And I had to clean every single edge too. So it's like an hour for every wing. Be warned. I think I did 2 wings in one sitting, and I ended up spending like 3 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should not have done this. I bit off way more than I should have. Okay, so here's the next wing. This is gray applied. This is blank, just for your comparison. This is dark brown applied. This is blank. And now this is gray and dark brown also applied. So wait for them to dry and then grab that Q-tip with your paint thinner and clean it off. This is blank. This is with gray, dark brown, little touches of black. I think I might use some black here, maybe here and here. On the darker panels, it's okay to use black. Maybe in some corners, maybe around here. But a lot of cleaning, to get to this stage. So here you go. Here's another blank one. And this was the last one I did. I worked on the wings first. I worked on the underside of the wings first because you do get better. You do get more confident as you go along. You want the top fin to be the last thing you do. And you can tell here I was getting kind of confident. I got really familiar with it, and I was starting to go ahead and add weathering details. You can see it kind of run off, dripping down. That was intentional. I had to do that with kind of like a wet, very damp Q-tip. Not very damp, very lightly damped Q-tip. All right, so I've gone ahead and started adding runoff and weathering details. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off. We'll do a part 3 because I'm getting into 20-minute zone. All that's left is weathering details and gluing and lighting. All that will be in part 3. Thanks for watching these videos. I hope you're enjoying this walkthrough. And if you're wanting to build this model, again, this is a very awesome model when it's done. And if you do a good job with it, it looks just fantastic. I've done the Perfect Grade Millennium Falcon, and this shuttle was actually equally as frustrating as that Millennium Falcon. I think I spent like almost a year on the Millennium Falcon. So it was harder and took more time, but the shuttle probably was just as challenging and aggravating at the same time, but so rewarding. And I do recommend lighting it. So stay tuned for part 3 when you get to the lighting part, because that was probably the trickiest part. And the most aggravating part was the gluing. I was about to pull my hair out for that one. So this has been a video walkthrough of how to build the shuttle. I hope these pictures are helpful, and if you're building this, I do suggest going through this at least once, and when we get to the end in part 3, I'll do what I learned from this, what I would do differently. So stay tuned for that in part 3 of how to build the MPC Shuttle Tydirium model kit. Stay tuned for the next video, part 3. Thanks and bye.